Hey, welcome to the latest episode of the Wellbeing Show. I'm your host, Noel. I forgot my name then. Who am I? I was saying to my guests before, I'm just in the process of buying somewhere, a place. So the background is going to change in a couple of months, hopefully, folks, if I get the mortgage through today. But my head is like, woo, where am I? Who am I? What's going on? But there you go. Such is life. High class problems. Uh, I've got a great guest who's joining us from the West Coast, I believe, in the US, and we'll find out where soon. I happen to, well, I like both the East and the West Coast. It's the coast I love, so New York, etc., but also not so much Los Angeles, but definitely the West Coast. California has got to be one of my most favorite places in the planet. I have to say, I love it, adore it. Michaela, Dr. Michaela Johnson, who's going to be joining us soon and chatting about just the usual preamble, folks. It's recorded as though it's live, but it's not live. So if you've got questions, it'd be great to hear from you. Get me on WhatsApp 07506 319 745 +44. Delete the zero if you're doing it from outside the UK. But don't call during the show because I'll probably be doing something else and you'll get a grumpy old man rather than a nice person going, "What are you doing interrupting my life?" Send me a message and I'll get back to you. Michaela, welcome. Thanks for joining us at not too early. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning, isn't it, for you?
Yes, thanks for having me. It's a skosh on the early side, but I really value the morning start when it's positive and oriented towards good conversation. So I'm here for it.
Let's hope that's what happens then.
Yeah, but I will be sipping my coffee.
That's okay. I was going to
My
say,
brain,
I've had enough coffee. That's the next
not
question.
yet.
Oh, yeah, it's all right. Just ram it in while we're chatting away. That's fine.
Yep.
And whereabouts on the West Coast are you exactly?
Right now, I'm in Northern California because I'm about to launch on a book tour. But I do split my time between Southeast Alaska and Northern California.
Okay, great. So are you, Alaska is America, isn't it, as well? I
Yep.
was about to say you Canadian, then went, no, hang on, your geography's better than that.
We actually do jump over Canada though to get to it. So you're
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
entirely inaccurate. Yep.
So are you Alaskan or Canadian? Which one are you?
I would say I'm definitely USA American.
Yeah,
Uh, but my heart is definitely in the wild Alaska. And
great.
yeah, and I do quite a bit of traveling. So I've been to, I don't know, 25 different countries at this point or something like that. So I've seen quite a bit of the globe or quite a bit of the earth, I should say. Yeah.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small rural town in Desolation Wilderness near Lake Tahoe.
Is that the
Uh,
next bit, Desolation?
yeah, Desolation Wilderness was my backyard. Yeah. So it's quite an interesting story. I actually grew up
Oh.
in a 27-foot fifth wheel with no running water and no electricity. So kind of very Swiss Family Robinson before it was cool though. So living in a van by the river is cool now. It was not cool when I was doing it as a kid.
These days it's a lifestyle choice. Then it was poverty. But
Exactly, precisely. Yes, yes.
wow. So how did all that come about? What was the sort of background of your parents that meant you lived in that way?
Yeah, so my dad actually had a very successful construction business during the height of the construction boom. And they were building tremendous amount of houses. The stock market crashed, and overnight, all of the spec homes that he had out were basically
So this
worth
was
nothing.
sort of 2008-ish or before.
This was actually the first one. So this was back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Right. Okay. Wow. Yeah.
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 And so rather than declare bankruptcy, my dad decided to sell everything we owned and pay off everyone he owed. So
Okay.
it's actually a very admirable move, but that left us literally with a trailer in the woods and a porta potty in the yard.
And how old were you then when that happened?
I was 11, so it was I was preteen, and it was definitely a very interesting time to be going through kind of all the hormonal changes and the growth spurt stuff, and be in a very small space with my two brothers and my mom and dad.
Well, because I grew up in a poor sort of family from birth, really. Sort of, my parents worked very hard, but it was they were Irish immigrants, and
Oh,
I go to school and being quite embarrassed about it all, to be honest. Couldn't get the stuff that everybody else had, and
yeah.
I'd have hand-me-down clothes and clothes from the state and stuff like that, and I didn't really talk about it. It wasn't something that was talked about very much.
No, exactly. And so it's kind of like, shh, we have this kind of behind the scenes life, and you just zip it and go about your day. And that was definitely how it was. And it was really hard too for my mom because she actually is an incredible interior designer. And she was decorating these glamorous homes that my dad was building, and then they were selling them. And so she did make the trailer as nice as she possibly could, but it certainly was still a trailer at the end of the day. My mom used to say, you can slap lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig.
Absolutely. I'm no sayings like that, very much so.
Yeah.
And one of the things, though, that we did have growing up was very much a sense of community amongst, well, my brother and my sisters, but also there were other people that we knew
Yeah.
that were in similar situations. Was that true for you, or were you just quite isolated?
Yeah, the small town that we were actually in, a lot of people kind of didn't want to be trifled with, and they lived that way. And there's a huge sense of community. And to this day, I mean, I'm still in touch with many of the people from that town. So, it is kind of a very, it's one of those places you want to have your car break down. You know what I mean? Because there's going to be people that are going to help you.
Yeah, like myself and my brother, we ran wild as kids, but actually, I now know all the neighbors were looking out for us, but we never felt like anybody was looking out for us. So we were allowed to go wild, but there was the drums were talking and the parents were talking.
Well, I'll tell you, yes, we too ran wild through the forest. We spent a lot of time at the little airport that we had as kids. I was rarely home, right? Because we were out exploring the woods. That being said, when I got my driver's license, I once was speeding home from high school to the house. And by the time I got home, three people had called my parents to let them know. So I will say it has its benefits and its setbacks for sure.
Absolutely. And how was school for you? I found school to be a place to escape to. It was it was a different set of rules. I could be good and get
Yeah.
stars and
Yeah.
achieve and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I was a straight A student except for math. I hated math. I threw myself into my work, and my mom she was always a very big reader. She was always reading books, and even before I was old enough to read, she would be playing books on tape
Mm.
for me. So she'd set me up with a box of chicken and a biscuits and a book on tape. And so still to this day, I love learning. I love reading. I read still about a book a week. I think I've read like 600 self-help books for all the doctoral research that I did as part of, in addition to the journal work and all of that, the medical journal work. So I just can't get enough of that stuff.
And you were in school, successful, achieving on the art side of things, by the
Yeah.
sounds of it, and the creative side of things.
Yeah.
You were drawn to that. Do you have siblings as well? Was it were you the
Yeah, I have two younger brothers. My youngest brother is like 6'5", 6'6". So he towers over me. Yeah, so it's kind of funny. But they're still giving me trouble to this day, right? They love to razzle me and keep me humble.
Well,
And
doing a great job. I'm sure you don't need much humbling. I mean, you with the background that you have, I'm sure you appreciate what you've got, right? So,
absolutely
but
100%. But
one of the
just
things that, go on.
if my britches start to get too big, my brothers make sure they keep them in check.
Right. And so you enjoyed school, and you gone, well, I guess you were successful there, and it was a nice break from the poverty and all that sort of stuff, which often it is, I think, so, um,
Yeah. And
and,
we knew we were poor. We knew we were poor, but I don't think I ever considered it. There were times where I felt disappointed that I didn't have things that other kids
oh,
had. But our life was so full
mm,
anyway
mm,
that it didn't really feel devastating all the time, right? Like it wasn't always so obvious to us. There were times when it was a little bit more on the challenging side. Sorry, I got something in my eye here. But for the most part, my dad did a great job and my mom did a great job of making sure that we had what we needed. And like, for example, I remember my dad brought home a bunch of scrap wood from one of his job sites, and he and my brothers built a tree house, right?
Right.
So
Yeah,
there were
yeah, yeah.
things that we were doing that were keeping us busy and occupied, where I don't think we realized just how bad it really was. I think my parents did a great job of kind of finding the positive in what we were going through.
I mean, which is interesting because I don't want to get into this sort of toxic positive stuff because that's quite disturbing. But there is something about there's poverty and then there's psychological poverty, and they're
Yeah.
very different things. I mean, you didn't have that psychological poverty by the sounds of it. You had the opposite of that. You had quite a lot of wealth in terms of relationships and support and interesting and stimulating things to do.
I've told this story probably, I don't, 500 times because of the first book that I wrote on this upbringing. And I've never heard anybody position it that way. And I think that is probably the best framework that I have heard to describe how it really wasn't a bad thing, because we had exactly, there was the psychological wealth. And I think I've never heard that term before. And I think that's really beautiful way to look at it.
Yeah, well, it does sound like that. That's the way it's coming across, is that. I think the sadness is when poverty goes into somebody's mind and it limits their capacity to believe in themselves, uh,
Yes.
which often does happen, I think. And some people can be born into poverty, get very wealthy, but still they're in that in terms of their experience of themselves.
Absolutely. Yes.
And we can be given a sense of bounty, I think, from an early age. If and it's I don't need to lecture about this. I think it's all about attachment and that attachment framework, that loving framework. That if we're brought up into that, we're going to be all right in the end.
And this is what I was going to say to you as you were talking. I was going to say it's all about primal wounding. I know we're going to get into that, but that's exactly, it's all rooted in attachment, 100%.
Tell me about attachment and tell the listeners about attachment, what that is. And I was writing about it the other day, and I think sometimes people don't. I think some people think it's a dating strategy.
It seems to be getting trendy, right?
That's
So
right. But tell
who
me,
would have thought?
as a sort of a person with a postdoctoral thesis who knows a lot about attachment, particularly as you're a psychologist as opposed to a medic. Not that I'm posing the two in opposition. I'm just saying from psychology, we're very much based upon this attachment. Do you want to do something about your
Oh, it's okay. It's gonna be that way. This is
okay.
actually a very interesting story. So I actually had an eye injury as a young person, and so I have a very small sinus cavity here. And sometimes in the morning, if I wake up stuffy and allergies and whatnot, it will water for like the first 3 hours until I get all. So yeah, so it's just gonna be that way. But
So
thank you.
tell me, what is attachment and why is it important to understand this?
Well, and you said something so interesting, which is the medic versus the brain, right? And or the psych.
Yeah.
And this is something that I always tell clients to help them understand. I say, doctors throw medicine at it, and that's great, but I'm gonna rip off the Band-Aid and make it hurt. Like, that's gonna be the difference. I'm not gonna give you the ibuprofen, right? We're gonna have to figure out what caused this. And that's kind of how I look at the difference in what I do versus like the MD.
Yeah,
Obviously,
absolutely.
MDs also do all sorts of other things in terms of broken bones and amazing things. But so one of the things that I find is really beneficial in my practice is to draw analogy and metaphor into the session so that people can really kind of understand these highly complex psychological concepts or neuroscience
Right.
scientific concepts. And I saw the greatest reel the other day on social media that was such a fantastic viewpoint of attachment. So it was at a basketball game with the big crowd, and they were doing baby races. Okay. And all these babies were lined up and they had to crawl to their mom or their dad that was on the other side of the middle lane. And the moms and the dads are cheering on the babies, come, come, come. And this one little girl, she's crawling along and she's leading the pack. And all of a sudden she stands up and she walks for the very first time back to her mom. And so this was such a beautiful descriptor of healthy attachment, right? Like I can be far away from you and I can also be really excited to get back to you. So excited, in fact, that I can stand up and run. I can find so much inner strength from the relationship that you and I have that it actually empowers me and launches me forward into something even better in life than I thought was possible for myself.
Super. What a brilliant description. The oddest thing is I've just literally watched that exact video on
Did you?
TikTok before. And
It's
I'm sorry,
fantastic,
I
right?
started crying. I
Right.
started crying. I did. I started crying. As soon as I saw the baby stand up, I went, yes. Love is like that, which is another word for attachment, isn't it? That
Yes.
that love is does encourage us to go beyond our perception of our limitations. It gives us the courage to explore, right?
That's exactly right. And I will use this description in my client work to be able to draw the visual of really what attachment is, because we can talk about Ainsworth and Bowlby and secure and avoidant and anxious and all these things, but at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's being able to be away from someone and then turn around and come up, stand up and run to them in a way that you didn't even think you could.
Yeah.
So it's just really
Yeah,
beautiful.
absolutely. Yeah, it's wonderful. If people haven't seen it, go and watch that video. You'll be weeping buckets, I promise you. And
It was
it,
a weeping buckets. Yeah, maybe I
it
should
was.
watch
And
it with
all the
other
other
eyes.
mums were like, "That's gorgeous." And that's the other thing about this is it's non-competitive in the herd, right? Because everybody else recognizes it and goes, "Yes," and celebrates it. It's extraordinary feeling, isn't it? We all get that wash of positive feeling, right?
It's incredible. I've actually done quite a bit of extracurricular work in nonverbal communication and cues.
Yeah,
And it's really fascinating how we are so adept at picking up on like happy, smiling, excited, exuberant, and also the more, depressing, sad, shocked, all those things too. But I think that as a human collective, when we are witnessing pure joy,
yeah.
we have to engage with it. It's part of our dynamic.
Yeah, and I'm sort of laboring the point. I guess you'll understand why. Because, we watch these sort of strange Hollywood movies about zombie apocalypses and everybody starts killing each other and starts eating each other. But that isn't what humans do. As
No.
we know from the pandemic, some people did that, but most of us, we herded together
Mhm.
to help each
Mhm.
other because that's our basic instinct as humans is to bond, right?
I saw another incredible meme that I just love so much. It was a photo of a shark coming at fish, and it
Yeah.
said, "Don't panic, get together," or something like that. Come together. And it was the school of fish all together, far bigger than the shark, right? So, and that's so true. Like, yes, we can have a big scary thing, but when we can rally together, there is power in our process of being human.
And that thing I think is very important. It's also, I think, in terms of because the origins of psychology, as you know, comes from one of the guys was particularly depressed about what's the state of the world, and it shows in his theories, right?
Yep.
He's also abused, as we can see in his theories, and sexually abused,
Yeah.
and very sad, tragic for him, and
Yeah.
all of that sort of stuff. But actually, modern psychology, I would say, leans more towards where he stopped, which was the development of the frontal lobes, the development of the pro-social in us, the bonding, the community, the higher functioning that comes from relationship, etc., etc. Because we can only count because we're in groups. I mean, people just don't know that. The spare capacity in the brain to have numbers, to have art, etc., all comes from the fact that we look after each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where it's coming from, right?
And comparison,
Yes,
truly.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, when did you become interested in this stuff? Was it at school? What led you to sort of going on to do your studies at university or school, as you would say, college, I guess?
I actually had like this very successful career in marketing. I was working as a marketing director,
Right.
and I just started to realize that everything in marketing was about human psychology. And so
Yeah.
I said, and at the same time, I happened to be going to see a counselor.
Did you see, do you know about the idea that marketing was started by one of Freud's nephews?
I was going to say, it wouldn't surprise me if it was Freud. It would not
One of his
surprise me a
nephews,
bit.
and
Yes.
and actually went and spoke to him about tell me about this stuff, Uncle, Uncle Sigmund. And he
Fantastic.
used Uncle Sigmund's theories to start sort of the first marketing company. Isn't that strange?
Yes. Yes. So that's what I realized. I said, if this is how it kind of played out. If I want to be better at marketing, I need to better understand human psychology.
Right, okay,
And
yeah.
I happened to be going to sit with a counselor, right? And she's sitting on her chair and she's got her shoes off and she's got her feet up on her couch, her little chair, and she's got a blanket. And she's just saying, "Tell me about your day." And I'm thinking, I want that job. I'm traveling 100,000 air miles a year. I'm stressed out. I'm working East Coast, West Coast, all over the planet. And I'm like, how do I get that job where I sit there and talk to people about life, right? Like kind of like you and I talked about before we hit record today.
Yeah.
And so I said, that's it. I guess I'm going to have to go get a master's degree in psychology.
Okay.
My
Okay.
undergrad was in communications. I signed up for a master's program. I
Yeah.
was accepted and absolutely fell in love with psychology. And I thought this offers so much more insight to life than what I've been doing. And so I did continue in my marketing career while I was finishing my master's. And then as soon as I was complete with that, I pivoted over to psychology in the psychology world.
Okay. So tell me, what's the difference between people who hear these words, psychology and psychiatry? What's sort of, tell me about that, those.
Yeah, so to kind of go back to what we were talking about before, psychiatrists have an MD and they're going to give you medication to make it feel better.
Okay.
And of course, they have all of the same background that we would have as psychologists, right? But we have a PhD or a PsyD, which is more philosophy oriented than medical oriented.
Mm,
Doesn't mean that we don't cross feed. It doesn't mean that we don't have to do the same amount of work in terms of, understanding how things work medically. It just means that our emphasis is more philosophical.
okay. And am I right in thinking in the US, some psychologists can prescribe, because that's the big difference here in the UK.
No, you have to have, if you're going to prescribe, you have to have an MD here.
That's the same in the UK. So
Yeah,
psychiatrists, the big difference is they prescribe medication. Okay.
that's right. That's
And
right.
that's a sort of legal thing.
Yep.
It's interesting, the British Psychological Society, a couple of years ago, it'd be interesting to know what you think about this, declared the end of psychiatry. They said that the chemical soup theory of mental illness and mental health is dead in the water. It's finished.
I think a lot of people are waking up to that. I've always been holistically oriented in all areas of my life. Obviously, I grew up with nothing, so I've always been a bit more organic or hippie, we might call it, right? But I do think a lot of people are starting to realize that there is so much to, functional health and wellness in terms of the whole body and functioning systems that play in. For example, I had a filling crack and I went in to see the dentist and she put a crown on, but it's not right. It's not adjusted properly. And so for 3 days, right? Like I can't chew, I can't eat, I'm short-tempered when it comes to dinner time. Nobody talked to me, right? Like all these things. So there's no way we can separate one from the other. And I think people are starting to see that. And, medication is a way to address a symptom that can give you enough relief to be able to focus on the cause, I think. But I tend to advocate for feel it so we can move through it.
So
Um,
how I sort of understand it is my early days was intake wards in psych sort of assessments, and without the medication, the person coming in couldn't stabilize enough for me to do the work.
to even talk to them,
And
right?
so that was needed. And also, I'm a great fan of, SSRIs. If they work for you, use them. There's also some conditions such as bipolar, which could be very serious and very dangerous if people come off their meds. So think about that very carefully. So I'm not anti-medicine, but I suppose my complaint, if I have it, is that it's so limited. And
Well,
health is not the absence of illness, which is what medication gives you. It gives you a lessening of symptoms, but that's not health, really.
and I have a lot of thoughts on that. I tell my clients if they're thinking about going on antidepressant or something like that, it's like you're stepping out onto a Major League Baseball field
Sure.
and the pitcher is throwing a ball at you at 150 miles an hour. The chance of you hitting it is pretty slim unless it's accidental. Now, the medication is going to slow down the ball,
Yeah.
but it's not going to replace the training that you need to
No,
be there in
that's
the
right.
first place.
Fantastic description. That's right.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
still need
So
to
that's,
develop those skills.
you
Absolutely.
have to develop the skills to be there in the first place. And that's exactly what I tell my clients. And, I
That's a
think there's a
lovely way of
lot.
saying it, Michaela. Thank you for that. I'm going to steal that from you if that's all right.
Yes, by all means.
It's super way of saying it. Absolutely super way of saying it. I really get that. So if people don't understand what we're talking about, that a lot of psychological practice is about how you think and how you behave and how you manage your thoughts and behavior and the toolkit that you have in life. And I actually think a lot of psychology is just really good advice.
Absolutely. Yeah, perspective, right? And I think something that I'm coming to learn also, though, is that a lot of what we know to be maybe autism related, Parkinson's related, bipolar related, does have to do with parasitic and fungal overload in the body, right?
Yeah,
When your body is so sludgy that your pathways are not able to purify and detox those things, you're going to have symptomology. It's the same thing. The reason that you get athlete's foot or a rash is because there is a fungal problem in your body. So we slap a cream on the athlete's foot, but that's not addressing what's happening in the microbiome. So I think all of it is important. And when we zoom out and start to look at it as an entirely fun, you can't look at your car and go, oh, it's smoking and start with the fuel tank, right? Like you have to look at the whole car. You have to
yeah,
really zoom out and take a
yeah.
look at everything that's
Like
happening. And
today, I'm because of the buying the house thing, I'm distressed. There's a lot of
yes,
adrenaline in my
yeah,
body. I come from a background where adrenaline was quite toxic because there was
yeah.
violence and there was a particular type of poverty which wasn't helpful, etc., etc. So I know this. So today I've been popping in some microbiome stuff into my gut because that's where it goes. And I understand that connection. And I don't worry about that now. I've got the solutions, right? So that's it.
Yes.
So you do the psychology, you go, oh, I like this, I go and do the next one. Where I'm trying to figure out where does this flying stuff come in? So there's two questions I've got. One is when was the first book? I mean, I think anybody who writes more than well, I think anybody who writes one book should be locked up because there's something wrong with you. And then you write more than one, you deserve everything you get, right? So where does the book come in and where does the flying come in?
Yes.
Have a
So
pilot or what? What happened?
it's yeah, I don't I think it's a problem actually. I think it's a mental health problem, I've decided.
Right. Welcome to
So
the world.
so back to that growing up poor. We had a small airport and my dad would take us up on the weekends
Okay.
and
Oh,
we spent
wow.
a lot of time sitting at they had a campground at the airport that was in my small town.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my mom would make sandwiches and we would go and we would just watch the airplanes fly.
Ah,
And my dad would talk to the pilots when they'd land and visit with them. And we had an event called the Tail Dragger Fly-In. And it was a great event. It was free for kids, and it was just one of those fantastic things that the pilots that were there were so generous. And they had this Young Eagles program, and I got an opportunity to go up in an airplane called a Christian Eagle. And the pilot took me up, and here we are over my small town, and he's doing these hammerheads and all these, aerobatic maneuvers. And I realized, like, wow, there is a whole world out there. And I didn't want to get stuck in my small mindset, my small town mindset, right?
yeah. Yeah.
So that really was the start of my aviation desire. I mean, truly, it started that day. Once I tasted flight in
Yeah.
that way,
Yeah.
there was no chance that I wasn't going to become a pilot, right? Like I had to do it.
Wonderful.
And I spent a lot of time in relationships where I was a co-pilot, like literally and figuratively. Um, so kind of choosing relationships that were keeping me small, choosing relationships that were keeping me kind of backburnered or one down rather than side by side.
How
And
interesting, because that's not the way you were brought up. It's really interesting. It wasn't, it was just something, I mean, it does happen, right? It happens in life.
well, and this is so the primal wounds and everything that I've done there is rooted in my search to find that answer.
Okay.
How can someone who grew up so empowered to create a great life right? And to learn from all these life experiences, choose to put herself in a situation
I'm
where
interested. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
had to know. I had to know.
Yeah.
And truly I do think that I've learned that my primal wound perfectly set me up to choose those relationships from an empathic standpoint.
All right. Tell us what a primal wound is.
Yeah, so it's rooted in Ainsworth and Bowlby's work, and what my doctoral research was in was finding out the answer to this. And what I learned is there are seven primal wounds or core beliefs that we formulate as a very young person. And it doesn't mean your parents were bad. It doesn't mean your upbringing was horrible. Sure, we all have traumas, we all have incidents, and this is what I like to tell people. Your hand pulls off of a hot stove. You don't get mad at your hand for doing that.
Mm.
But your brain remembered the moment. Your brain goes, "Oh, that's something I need to take caution about." And so these primal wounds are exactly that. So I'll give you one using kind of clean language like that's less complicated. As a child, you decide, I'm not good enough. You have a moment, you have a memory moment that says, I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
As a teenager, it becomes a never ever statement. I'm never going to be good enough. I'm never going to be chosen for the basketball team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then as an adult, we paradoxically seek out people and situations that affirm the narrative. And the reason is because it's comfortable to us. It's what we know. It actually feels safer than choosing something different, which is I am good enough. And so we get into these relationships where we literally pick the person that is going to activate that wound. And ironically, some of those early childhood memories come from that primary caregiver. And and it doesn't have to be something major. It can be something very small, for example, the powerless wound usually originates with a parent or a sibling that was ill.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
didn't feel like you could help them or save them or make it right. And so you generate this whole thought process behind that
Mhm.
of
I
feeling
I think
powerlessness.
there's a lot of really important points you're making here. One of them I want to highlight is it's not of no use whatsoever to get into the blame game around this stuff. It's
100%.
absolute waste of time.
You
A-
would not be mad at your hand for pulling off a hot stove. It's human
Absolutely. It's got to
survival.
be looked at and we have to be interested in it, in that sort of mindful sense. Oh, look at me, what I'm doing, as opposed to that's because of. It's like, what isn't that interesting the way I am? And as soon as I become interested in myself in that way, then boom, I have the power to make some decisions about is
This
that,
is
do I want to be
exactly,
interested in that? Right.
you so get it. I so love we're having this conversation. Yes. And this is exactly what I tell my clients. The key is to get curious. The
Yes.
key is to get curious because it's not about what happened or what you did. It's about what you do next.
Yeah.
And that's the most important part. And so,
And I would say, and this is again, I mean, I feel this quite strongly, but I think most people don't understand the revolution that happened in psychological thinking from these early Freudian stuff, where you're almost talking about being programmed by stuff, right? And this is
yep.
the inevitability of this programming. You're stuck forever. Well, that's because Freud was depressed, right? It, okay.
Roy was depressed.
That's
Yep.
it, right? And I don't blame him. Look at the world he lived in, and look what
Yep.
happened.
Yep.
Etc. I would have been depressed, but psychology became revolutionarily different when we understood that really it's postpartum that's interesting, and it's the relational environment that we're in postpartum. That's
Yes.
really where the gold is, and
Yeah.
that's where we need to be looking, right? Yeah,
Yes.
going away. Okay, and so. I've got a sense the flying, I get that metaphor. Suddenly you see there's beyond the horizon stuff. Okay.
Yep.
And that's really important. But
Yep.
also you're carrying a legacy. And did that lead to the first book in terms of looking at this sort of primal wound stuff and wanting to share to people?
It's so funny. I often say if I could go back and you could tell me then that, hey, this is going to be the foundation for your life's work, I would have laughed you out of
That's
my
right.
house.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would have been like, okay, yeah. But truly, and this is what I tell my clients too. I say everything that you're doing is just a part of the foundation to the castle that you're building, the magnificent, existence that you're creating. And when you start to
It's
look
just
at it,
another key concept, I think, in modern psychology, the concept of transformation. We can
exactly.
transform things, whatever it is we're given. Like people often use that the image of for that sort of Chinese flower. What's it called? The flower in
The, yes, yeah,
lotus. The
I
lotus.
get, I don't have it, but I can picture
The
it. Yes.
lotus. The
I was
lotus.
going to say the lotus.
It,
Yes.
it becomes a beautiful thing from mud, and that's what we're trying to achieve with ourselves, right?
Yes, exactly.
So was that the first book? That was the content of the first book, right?
I think the first book was my therapeutic process unfolding in real time because actually how it started was an online blog before the word
Oh
blog
wow.
existed. So I was posting these I would write like a story of my childhood and post it online. And
Wow.
it started gaining wings, no pun intended. People were loving it. They were just like, this is so hysterical, like this upbringing. Because I was telling the stories of what we were doing in terms of building tree houses and all these different things. And at the end of every one of them, there was a theme, you know, and at the end of every one of them, there was a learning moment. There was a growing moment. There was something that I could take away from that into life. And so people kept telling me, you have to write this book. You need to publish this book. And that's really how it came to be. It was an online therapy blog.
Brilliant. And what's the first book called so that people can go and find it?
Teetering, teetering on disaster.
Teetering on Disaster. How interesting. That's really interesting. Did
Yeah.
it feel like that?
Um, I feel like it was one of those things where we were narrowly escaping things all the time, right? Like we were always somehow coming out clean in these really messy things. So yes, it definitely felt like teetering on disaster.
Myself and my brother, we decided we were stuntmen. Don't
Right? Yeah.
right. Yeah, laugh immediately in identification. You know exactly what I'm saying, don't you?
Yep. Yep.
And it's sort of like I don't know how we're alive. I
Yeah, right.
realized from it's like, my mum's dead, so I can say this now. But if she was alive, I wouldn't admit this in public because she would die, thinking about what we got up to. But I'm quite surprised. But we did. We got through it, and we're fine after all of that. We didn't sort of hurt ourselves too much. Although he won the stakes, he got run over, so
Wow.
he was
Wow.
the winner. You know what I mean? So there you go. Um, so that like somehow, when did you stop teetering, or have you not stopped teetering?
You know, this is really fascinating that you asked me that question because I've just come to realize in the past, I don't know, maybe a year or less, that teetering is actually a really good thing.
Okay.
I think that number one, it's excellent to live on both ends of the spectrum. I work hard, I rest hard, right? I'm always somewhere on this teeter-totter of life. And I find that the moments that I've had the biggest growth have come from when I've been teetering on disaster. So I don't know
What it
it's a
makes me
bad
think
thing.
of is that baby in the video that you mentioned at the beginning.
Yes.
It's not, I mean, it's not walking, it's walking, but it could fall over at any point. But if you don't do
But
that, you will never walk, right?
that's absolutely right. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm really coming to learn that teetering on disaster is a pretty spectacular place to be.
And
Yeah,
it's a
not
very good
100% of the
question, I
time,
guess.
but
The when you stopped being co-pilot, was that after you'd written the book, or during writing the book, or because you wrote the book, or sort of what was that process? Because I'm interested in this, like about narrative therapy,
yeah,
writing stuff out has
yeah,
it has a different way of us experiencing stuff when we write rather than
yeah.
when we just talk in our heads, right?
So I wrote a book called Empowered, a motivational journal for women. I was actually hired to write it by a publishing house. And then I wrote a book called Growth Mindset, a workbook for adults. And I found myself not wanting to get excited or share these books. And they were really good. They were really good. Empowered, a motivational journal for women, went on to be an Amazon bestseller, among other things, and it did great. And I sometimes will log on and check the reviews, and they're all 5 stars, positive and happy, but I wasn't happy. I was like, why am I holding back from really running with these things that I know can change lives? And it's like, I don't think you ever finish the work. I feel like you're always doing the work. But I realized that I was not living in alignment. I was not walking the talk. And so, in order for me to do that, I realized if I want to be empowered, then I need to step out of the role I've been playing, keeping myself small. And that's really when everything kind of started to really gain wings, right? Like started to go supersonic speed. So I signed up for a flight lesson, and it was it was the end of something and the beginning of something new,
Wow.
for sure.
Wow. Wow. So what age were you then? Are you allowed to say? Am I allowed to ask?
Yeah, no, you can ask. This was quite a few years ago now. Um, and it was funny because I remember taking off and I remember taxiing the airplane and I said, I'm really anxious. I'm like really nervous.
Yeah.
And my flight instructor said, well, the good thing is I'm not. And I was like, okay. But the moment this particular airplane that I was flying is tandem, so I can't see anybody. I'm by myself essentially, right? Like I'm trusting that there's someone there that's going to be able to save me, but I'm kind of on my own. And I remember the moment that I pulled the stick back and the wheels lifted up and there was no turning back. That was the moment that I was on a new trajectory. I was on a new path, and I couldn't go back to the life I'd been living. I couldn't after that.
Okay.
And the landing was the most terrifying landing of my life, and I nearly ground looped the airplane. And I mean, it was awful. It was the worst ever.
Ba-dum,
And
ba-dum, ba-dum.
zoop, 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 almost wound up in the dirt off the runway.
Wow.
Yeah. And during my debrief, the flight instructor said, you know, you'll be a damn good pilot when you start believing in yourself.
Oh, oh,
And it was, it was like, oh,
damn. God damn. Wow. That's
right?
really something else.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm still working on believing in myself. Every
Oh.
time I think I'm just about there, I put myself in a situation that reminds me I suck at things.
And during all this time, you're practicing as a psychologist and
Yeah,
helping people and writing books. So
yeah,
you're the world, this amazingly successful person, which you are, but somehow inside still dimming yourself, and you have your own process and journey, right?
yep, yep. And it's interesting because I'd sit in sessions and I'd hear people talk about how they waited their whole life for the thing and now they've got this terminal illness or whatever. And I thought, I don't want that to be my
Right.
story.
That's
I
right.
don't want that to be my legacy. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
there's no better time than now to just do it.
Yeah. And that type of comparison is really useful, as you've mentioned before.
Yeah.
We can be uplifted by other people. Um,
Absolutely. That's a prime example of what I was trying to say earlier, where the comparison can help inspire you to be better and do things.
yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. So we are running out of time, unfortunately, but I want to get up to the current book. Now, tell me the title of the current book. It's really interesting.
Yes, it's called Seven Primal Wounds, Break the Patterns Keeping You Stuck.
Right.
And it's just, there's a free quiz that people can take to learn which of the seven primal wounds they have. And it's really positive because, and people always say, well, I don't want to be wounded. I don't want to have trauma. And I say, if you're a human, you've been wounded. You fell off your bike and got a knee scuff, and it's part of life and it's not a bad thing. And that's exactly what this book is about. It's about teaching people that you're not broken, you're actually working really well. If you're having emotional responses to your closest relationships, it's because your brain is doing exactly as it was intended to do, which is keep you alive.
Yeah.
And that's what the book's about. So once people know their primal wound, they can go through the process to really learn about their activations and what lights them up, and how it doesn't take much if your partner has said or done something that is in alignment with your primal wound. So if you're feeling insignificant and unchosen because your partner cancels a date night or doesn't come home from work on time and you made a nice dinner, or if your partner walks in the door and tells you you forgot to take out the trash, you walk in the door and they tell you you forgot to take out the trash, you feel that not good enough wound, right? All of these things, or you forgot to pay a bill and so you're feeling powerless, like gosh dang, those are activation moments. And once you learn them, you can totally disempower the wound.
Yeah.
You can say, hey, the story that I'm telling myself is that I'm not good enough because this moment has happened, this thing has played out. And I've watched couple after couple after couple have aha moments in session. Their relationships are improving. I had a couple literally yesterday. She said, if we'd had you 10 years ago, we wouldn't be contemplating divorce.
It's a really interesting idea. People don't, I don't think they quite believe this capacity for something to instantaneously change. And the reason is, and neuroscience backs this up now because we've seen it. Suddenly there are new pathways available, and we just go there because they're more effective and more efficient, right?
100%. So, most of my doctoral research was rooted in the neuroscience of attachment and creating new pathways for healthy relationships and responses. That's exactly what my doctoral research was in.
Yeah. And this is literally how our brain works, isn't it? It's like it's always looking for the next easy pathway. And that easy pathway could be into destruction, as you described. We're just
That's right.
staying within that pattern because that's the easy pathway. But actually, there is something I think, and I don't know what you think about this. This is more philosophical. We have, I think, a desire to be well, a desire to be whole, and it is a species desire. It's a sort of built into us as a species. I don't know that there's any sort of scientific evidence for that, but there's enough. I've seen it enough to think that's in us. I don't know what you feel about that.
Yes, and there's so much research that's been done with chimps, et cetera, that I could tap into with the minutes we have left. But here's what I'll say. Going back to that hot stove, right? You've now learned that it can be hot and it can be dangerous, but it doesn't stop you from cooking,
No,
right? It's just
that's
how
right.
you're going about it now. You're just going to go about it with a different mindset. You're just going to go about it with a little more awareness. And that's exactly what the book is about. Teaching you how to approach a potentially dangerous situation, which any close attachment is, right? You look at the loss of a dog or the loss of a partner or spouse, right? That is a potentially dangerous situation, and you can
The
still
price
choose
of
it.
love is loss. There you go.
That's right. That's right. So we can
Always there, and
stop.
it's always going to happen. You can't avoid it. You know.
Right, right. Every time you're choosing a relationship, you're choosing a potential hurt. And that's not a bad thing because, as we've seen and demonstrated, the power of the love and the attachment can also raise you to new heights.
And it's interesting. What's coming to mind? There's an old psychoanalytic writer book called The Importance of Disappointment.
I haven't read it. Oh,
It's
I'm
really
adding it to my
interesting.
list.
The British
Okay.
psychoanalyst. I don't really recommend that many psychoanalysts, but he's a really interesting writer. And there's a book called The Importance of Disappointment. It's about how we don't grow if we don't experience failure in some ways. Um,
100%.
Danger, risk, failure, these things are really important for our growth.
Yes.
Without them, if we don't have them, then we're just stuck in a nappy for the rest of our life.
That's exactly right. No, I loved our conversation, and this is it's so nice to be able to rap with someone who understands the language because you can add so much value to what I'm trying to impart, and a lot of folks don't have that background.
Thank you. That's kind of you to say. I'll take it because I've learned now that I am worthy, and that's a long time, so I can accept it when people say nice things to me. Never used to be able to. Um, where can people get hold of you online? I'm guessing. Have you got a website?
Yeah, so there's two websites. If they want to take the free quiz, they can go to sevenprimalwounds.com, and there's a whole bunch of positive information over there on that. And there's also Sky Talk Doc, where they can learn about my 7,000 nautical mile book tour, which is going to be starting probably about the time this is coming out. And I'm doing it in a vintage warbird.
No.
Uh, yeah, 1944 Stinson Reliant, only one of 25 that's left
Wow.
flying in in the world, actually. So.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're coming to London. You're flying over here still.
I'm not going to make it across the pond this trek, but,
Oh,
but maybe
that's
maybe I'll hit a bestseller and get a four-engine airplane that
Well,
can
this
make
is
it.
the plan. Then I want everybody to make sure Michaela gets a bestseller, so she'll come over to us and see us. Um,
Yes.
we can witness her weeping eye in real life.
Oh my gosh, is it still so
Oh,
bad?
it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It
It's
is
just
again.
part of life.
Send us those websites again so people can make a note of them.
Number seven, primalwounds.com and skytalkdoc.com.
And do you have one with your name on as well, or is it just those two?
I do, but my name, Michaela Renee, is really hard to spell, and Sky Talk Doc actually goes
Sky
there.
Talk
So
Docs. So Sky Talk Doc. Let's go and find that. Are you available to do talks and presentations and training and all this sort of stuff? Yeah.
100%. And we're launching and ramping up with all of that as the excitement for this concept is coming to life. So I'm really here for the journey and what's going to unfold and what I'm going to learn in the process.
Can we follow you on social media? I guess you'll be posting about the flights and the book tour, etc. Yeah.
Yes, the entire journey on all my social media, Sky Talk Doc and Michaela Renee on Facebook.
Brilliant. Michaela, really super to have you on. Thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
to us without enough coffee in you. That's impressive
Now it's
that you
cold.
survived.
Yes, thank you
Very
for having
impressive.
me.
Thank you. You stay there and say goodbye to folk. Folk, I hope you've really sort of got as much out of that as I have. And do go and check out Michaela's work. It's awesome stuff. And I will see you all at the next episode of the Wellbeing. So you stay there. Goodbye for now.